Did you see? Yeah. So right, we have a picture of him right next to. It looks very triumphant. And it has as of yesterday when I was looking at this post it has attracted over 6,000 likes, and many people have shared it. And essentially, it's a long post saying that Trump has earned the votes and he had beat Biden and he would eventually become the president again for the next 4 years. And a lot of people seem to agree with it.
How many people are in? Sorry, how many people are in that fan page or that group?
Oh, this is like the one of the largest one with the one of the ones with the largest following. Currently has over 200,000 followers.
Okay.
And it is growing. Entirely, the content is in Vietnamese. And you see that the admin posts regularly, like around the clock, based on the news that he got from the US, and mostly a lot of it was from conservative news sites like Fox News. Rarely do I see any sorts from New York Times or Reuters or neutral sources like that. I also looked at the popular and most read news sites here in Vietnam and see how they how much of an interest it is there. And apparently a lot of people are reading it, as I mentioned earlier. And these sites also put up a vote for the readers to decide who they think will win the election.
Yeah, sorry, Sen, can I step in just for a second and do a quick reset for new viewers? Also, hi, Sanya. Thanks for watching. So I'm Mike Tatarski, journalist based in Vietnam with Sen Nguyen. Also, well, she's a Vietnamese journalist. So we're both in Ho Chi Minh City talking about Vietnam reacting to the US election. And then a little later, we'll talk about the kind of the COVID situation here and in the broader region. But Sen, you were just saying, so one of the big news outlets here was did a poll of readers.
Yep. Thank you, Sanya. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. So I was looking at the votes, the polling that Vietnamese news sites put up on their site. So then the audience can decide who they think will win the election. And here we have VN Express, which is among the most read one in the country, with millions of people logging in every day. And you see here, the majority of people voted for Trump. And as you might see in the screen, quite a lot of people have voted as of last night when I was tuning in. Another one I would like to show you is on Tuổi Trẻ. It means youth in Vietnamese. This is also an equally popular news site, and their vote are unfortunately quite similar. And most people have voted for Trump. 80% of the readers who actually were engaged in this polling voted for Trump. So yeah, we see that. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I just had a question for you. Why do you think Trump is so popular with the voters on these sites? Or I mean, not they're not voting in the election, but on these online polls.
I guess people like to be. I guess people like to have their opinion heard. That's once. And it's kind of like a betting kind of entertainment show here, isn't it? Like people. Sorry, I think I just lost you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so it is kind of like an entertainment show for us here. And people are very much invested in the US election. I think a lot of people don't realize that the result might not affect them as much as they do to Americans. So like whatever they vote is not going to be very much influential. Yeah. But then also the reason why people like Trump is, as for the most obvious reason many have talked about, is that he's very anti-China. And that aligns with Vietnamese interests in the sense that the anti-China sentiment runs really deep in the country.
Yeah.
But Trump was popular before he became president, so people know him here as a billionaire, a successful businessman who has published a lot of books in Vietnamese. Yes, Peter, the sentiment does run throughout the region, most probably because of the issues in South China Sea. However, Cambodia, for example, stands out it's quite a different case. They are considered one of the closest allies with China in Southeast Asia. That's not the case for Vietnam. But anyway, coming back to Trump, so before he became president, he was already popular as a successful businessman. What has not been discussed much, I guess, in the global discourse is that when it comes to Vietnam, the Vietnamese people like Trump a lot because he reflects a lot of the desires and the lifestyle that they want for themselves. He married a beautiful model. That is what a lot of rich Vietnamese men do here. Um, and they see him as like a role model, like, wow, I want to be like him. And he's actually doing a lot of what the wealthy here are always doing. He appears to be a family man. He is constantly seen in the spotlight with his family, and he talks about how he likes them and adores them, and in that sense. And he also employs his children, which is what a lot of Vietnamese rich family business families do. So they see a lot of similarities in him. Besides the anti-China stand, these are the reason why Trump has been well liked in Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I stopped in a bookstore the other day, and I mean I've only heard of a couple of Trump's books, but I think there were 10 to 15 books with his name on it, translated into Vietnamese, or I guess co-written, all that sort of stuff. And Measy asked where the that poll was. That was on a Vietnamese website, so that would have been readers in Vietnam. Thanks for the question. But I also think it's important for people to realize that like the popularity of Trump doesn't reflect the right left Democrat Republican divide in the states. Like Obama was also really popular here. And obviously Trump has done the complete opposite of everything Obama has done. So I mean, do you think Biden will, like, I think Biden will probably end up being popular here. A lot of people just probably don't really know who he is simply because people like the US in general. I mean, is that kind of how you feel?
Unfortunately, these people, it's very easy to swing their opinions when it comes to global figures. Vietnamese, the sources of influence in Vietnam has been very much globalized. I think Biden would be very popular. Vietnamese people will be welcoming him, and I don't see any signs of people showing any scratch towards men. But I assume that I think he already said that he would maintain being tough on China. So that is a very good indication that Vietnamese people will be on his side. What I also want to add is that we do also have a sizable young population here who do care about climate change issues. And so far, Biden has talked with 7 world leaders in every conversation with every one of them. He has mentioned climate change issue. So I hope that when he does have the same conversation with the Vietnamese government, he will bring that up as well, because Vietnam is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change.
For sure.
And for that, he might win a lot of votes from Vietnamese young people here.
Yeah. So Measy has another good question. Would you say that Vietnam has a fake news problem? I mean, sadly, I think any country with social media has a fake news problem, and Facebook is very popular, hugely popular here. So a Vietnamese American friend of mine was at a family wedding here in Saigon last weekend, and one of his cousins said he read on Facebook that Trump donated like $350,000 of his presidential salary to charity every year, which that's not documented anywhere. So that's the kind of stuff that's going around on Facebook apparently. So yeah, I mean, sadly, fake news comes with the social media territory. I would say. I mean, Sen, you you read Vietnamese, so you probably see more than I do. Do you think it's an issue?
I don't think of it as a fake news problem. A fake news isn't actually a term that I think accurately describes the situation. That the world isn't as simple as good and fake news. It's disinformation or misinformation. And for a lot of readers in Vietnam who have difficulty reading in English, they need bilingual writers and informers and journalists to decode that for them. So I think that reliance is understandable, but it can also be dangerous because they are relying on these translators to inform them of the world that they are not able to read because of a different of language barrier. So then that I think is a liability. It doesn't mean that that is a fake news problem or is a or it will lead to fake news problem, but it could be a byproduct of it if they're not able to fact check and verify with the original source of the information.
Yeah. So hi, Eliza from New York. Thanks for tuning in. And also Beluga Blues asked, has Trump been to Vietnam? So yes, he's been twice. In November of 2017 when Da Nang hosted the APEC summit. And then again in February, I think it was February of 2019 for the Trump Kim Jong-un summit in Hanoi. So he came here twice as president. We'll say like both times he came, the popularity. So President Obama also came here when he was president, and like thousands of people, lined the streets to see his motorcade and that sort of stuff. And we didn't really see that with Trump, so it was a little bit different. He didn't really engage with Vietnamese culture at all, but he did come here twice. So for whatever that's worth.
Yes, he was here twice. I don't have a lot of impression from his visit. It wasn't as big of a spectacle like when Obama was here. I mean, and in that regard, right, we have to put things in perspective here. Obama was actually in 2017, when you compare with when Trump first came to the office, and if you look at Pew Research studies, Obama actually was 13% point more popular than Trump among Vietnamese who was asked to be a part of this study. So to put that in perspective, Vietnamese people actually did like Obama more than like Trump, but because now Obama is out of the picture for quite some time now, and Trump is always on the news, their attention is now directed into Trump. And a lot of his rhetorics align with Vietnamese interests, again, China. And I think what I also like to add here, which is interesting, is that Trump talks like a lot of Vietnamese men in a sense that he's very adamant, he's very opinionated, and he's very loud. And that's how a lot of Vietnamese men talks here, unfortunately, because of patriarchy. So yeah, he gets a lot of attention here.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of the blunt, not politically correct type of speaking that is definitely, you hear a lot. So just to follow up, Beluga Blues also asked that no major faux pas. So yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I think during both of Trump's visits, I don't remember any statements or public comments or anything that I think a lot of people kind of expected him to say something ignorant, but he refrained. Do you want to take Paul's question?
What did he ask? But Trump did nothing. It's that just put buncha. Are we talking buncha? Is that just puff optics, or does that speak Okay, Mike, do you want to jump in here? I actually don't really get the question.
Yeah. Sorry, we're both friends with Paul. His typing grammar is not always the greatest. I think he's asking if Obama was like actually engaging with the culture, if he was just eating that just for the optics. I'm sure obviously that was part of it. It was on Anthony Bourdain's show, which got a ton of attention. But I think it also showed, like, I think Obama was genuinely is genuinely curious about other places where Trump, even though he came here twice, I don't think he ever left his, hotel other than for diplomatic meetings, and certainly never showed any interest in, learning anything about Vietnam or anything like that.
I mean, politicians, everything they do in the public is for optics, right? And whether they're aware or not. So, sure, we can say that Obama shows interest in Vietnamese culture. We can't say that Trump isn't interested just because he doesn't do anything in the public optics. So I would like to be a little bit more neutral here. But
I would be surprised if he was interested.
Sure, he did. I remember in one of the conversation he has with I think it was either with the prime minister or the president, he was asking about a beautiful town in the north. I think it was Quảng or somewhere. I don't remember the name of the town, and he was asking, is it safe to go there? Which is a very weird question to ask, especially when it was being introduced as a tourism destination. And then obviously the Vietnamese leader had to say, of course it's safe, Mr. President, why wouldn't it be? Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to take Viet Footy, hey, from Twitter, by the way. I recognize your account. So you said, do you think it's also due to a majority of Vietnamese American programming being conservative leaning? I'll admit I actually don't. I've never seen any sort of Vietnamese American programming, but I have heard from my Vietnamese American friends that it does lean conservative. So I'm sure. I mean, my guess is that a lot of it is probably created or produced by people like middle-aged Vietnamese Americans who probably fled Vietnam after the war, who would be more conservative. I'm just guessing here, but I'm sure on the American side of it, that probably is part of the reason why that community, the older part of it at least, is more conservative.
I would like also to add to that. So if you look at the statistics, and this is not for me, actually only about 1 out of 3 of Vietnamese Americans have English fluency. And this actually affects where they get their news, right? So then if you only read in one language and you're not able to cross-check that, especially when the news you're reading, for example, the US election, is actually originally written in English. But then if you're not fluent in that language and you're reading in Vietnamese, you unfortunately have to be reliant on the person in the middle, the liaison of the language that you are going to read. So then, as I mentioned earlier, language is very important here. So then I think that's a big factor to see one of the reasons why the Vietnamese Americans community in America might be more conservative leaning than others, because one of them is the language access. And we also have to look at the history of how they migrated in the community that influenced them politically. I believe in Orange County, which was a strong foothold for the Republicans, wasn't it?
Still is, yeah.
Yeah. So then that, I'm sure, that among many factors.
Yeah, and I'll just do a quick reset. Seems like we have a lot of new people coming on. So I'm Mike Tatarsky with Sen Nguyen. We're both journalists based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I'm from the U.S., but I've been here for a while. And we have a couple of questions. There was one I wanted to get to.
I think somebody's asking what I do. Yes, I'm a local Vietnamese journalist. I've been doing this for quite some time. I do primarily English journalism. My bylines are at South China Morning Post, Al Jazeera, and Thomson Reuters Foundation, and other publications. Thank you for your question.
sorry, I was also going to say, if you're watching on Reddit or Twitter or something like that, check out the haps.tv. That's where this is streaming from. There's also if you go there, there's awards you can give. Well, I think you can give Sen because she's the host. But there's like awards you can give her for what we're doing. Somebody asked, Measy asked, is Vietnam aware that Trump is refusing to concede? So yeah, that's being reported. I mean, Sen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the kind of the mechanisms of how the election works aren't exactly understood. Even for Americans, they obviously can be confusing, figuring out the electoral college and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's being reported, but some people might not really quite understand the significance of it. At least that would be my guess.
Yeah, Vietnamese people are actually quite up to date. I mean, if they reading the news regularly, they're quite up to date with what is going on regarding the election and U.S. politics in general. So they are aware of the fact that Trump is is not planning to have a peaceful transition, and he might be planning a coup. So that is very much well informed here. Peter asks, how many expats in Vietnam speak Vietnamese? Mike Tatasky is a prime example of monolingual expat.
It's hard. It's a really hard language. No, I'm not ashamed of it, but it's a difficult language.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say Professor RC mentioned a couple times is quite evident in a lot of his comments, and that's a good point. But it doesn't really translate here. I mean, again, Sen, correct me if I'm wrong here, but he's never like directly targeted Vietnamese, at least not that I'm aware of, as president. And I think so. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but like racism isn't quite as frowned upon here as it is in the States. Is that a bad thing to say?
No, I don't think it is entirely wrong. But then again, I don't think Vietnamese people talk about racism enough.
It's different.
Yeah, we do have discrimination issues, but I don't think that it is as important and common and repeated in the public discourse on a regular basis that people actually think of it as a reference point whenever they think about world leaders. They think more about in terms of political and economic views instead of social issues, because whatever Trump is doing or helping propagate in the U.S. social wise, it is not affecting Vietnamese as much. That's what they think, but they might feel some of that impact, especially during the pandemic, when a lot of Asian Americans have been the target of discrimination and violence. They might feel that a lot stronger, but I'm not sure if they would immediately think that Trump is one of the person who kind of just inflate this racism against Asian Americans. It is one thing to be informed about Trump, but it is another thing to understand the impact of his action as a foreigner who don't live in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean the big divisive social issues of the U.S. don't translate here. It's obviously a very different country. I mean, there was that. Was it a couple months ago when they talked about banning, or not banning, but like, they were going to end the visas of foreign students who, if they weren't doing in-person classes, and that would have had a huge impact on Vietnamese because it's tens of thousands of Vietnamese study in the U.S., but that didn't really seem to really catch on here, even though it was the Trump administration. Tobias Footy has another question. Oh, were you going to go ahead?
No, you go ahead. What is Footy's questions?
Is there any suggestions on how to heal the divisiveness from the election, specifically in the Vietnamese American community?
That sounds like a book, not a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, I mean, a lot of older Vietnamese, like, have a deep-seated hatred of contemporary Vietnam because, like, if they were from the South, like, they lost their country. I've Vietnamese American friends my age who were born in the U.S. and then moved here, like, to live here. And I remember one of my good friends, his dad would call him from California and be like, "Why the hell are you living in this in that crappy country?" And he'd be like, "Dad, I mean, it's actually like kind of nice." So I don't know. And then actually another VAQ friend of mine, his sister, because their parents were just like watching conservative Vietnamese media, she created a newsletter that they didn't know she was behind it, and sent it to all of her family, like about with more moderate news in the Vietnamese language. And I guess that actually kind of moderated their viewpoints a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, just it's healing the divisiveness for all of the states is obviously going to be a massive challenge right now.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. Because obviously it's more of a U.S. problem than a Vietnam problem, right? But then again, you can also argue that there is a division within the Vietnamese community itself between the U.S. and Vietnam, and there is. I don't have a solution. What I will do now, which I think I'm doing quite well at, if I'm not being too hiring here, is to inform people about Vietnam, to have a wider perspective of Vietnam rather than just a communist country or like a shithole country. It is not. It has many interesting stories and people and perspectives to share, other than that a country that has a large following of Trump. We do have other interesting stories to share from Vietnam. So if you follow me and Mike on our Twitter, we will continue to share our stories with you. Where are people watching from? Can you guys share your locations, your city? How is it going over there? Are you guys working from home?
Also, I'll just do another quick reset. It seems like we're picking up viewers. So we're streaming from Vietnam. Mike Tatarski with Sen Nguyen, both in Ho Chi Minh City. We're journalists based here. I'm from the States. Sen is from Vietnam, from Hanoi in particular, right?
Yes.
Originally?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been talking about for the election for a little bit. Should we talk about some COVID news, most of which is good over here?
Wow, Daniel Leto is from Hanoi, watching from Hanoi. Hi, Daniel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Hanoi is
your hometown.
Probably a little bit chilly right now. So for audience who is not quite familiar with Vietnam geography, Hanoi is a capital city. It is in the north, and Ho Chi Minh City is in the south, and it is the largest city and also the economic hub of the country. People here colloquially, in a very friendly way, call Ho Chi Minh City Saigon, and it is completely fine. I actually rarely hear anybody say Ho Chi Minh City when they chat with their friends or family or talking on the street. So whenever you decided to visit Vietnam, don't worry about calling it Saigon. I got this question a lot.
Just watch out for the nationalist Twitter trolls. So we've got Seattle area.
Sorry, Mike, we lost you.
Am I back? Okay, I'm back.
Wow. Well, we have quite a diverse audience here. So yeah, we would like to give you some updates about the COVID situation in Vietnam. There is nothing to update. We don't have any cases here. We have not had any local infection or transmission or community transmission or whatever you call it now for over 2 months now. Everybody goes party every day, especially in Saigon. They don't care if they're working tomorrow. Saigonese people can't party, and I guarantee with you, you're gonna have a good time drinking when you go to Saigon. Not me. I have to work. Yeah. So Vietnam's current COVID-19 tally right now is over 1,200 cases, which is infinitesimal compared to the U.S. Numbers. Over 1,000 people have recovered. That means they've been discharged from the hospital. Unfortunately, we do have some deaths. 35 deaths at the moment. Many of the deaths have been elderly. Have been of elderly patients with underlying conditions diabetes.
That was all from
and kidney failure.
Sorry, that was all from the.
That was from the third wave. That was from the third wave from a city called Da Nang in central Vietnam. And Vietnam has actually crossed 3 waves already as of this point. Our first case was actually detected in late January, which is when everybody was celebrating Lunar New Year holiday. Culturally important is like similar to Christmas to you guys in the US. Everybody comes home, enjoy a good time together, catching up, paying respect to our ancestors and to our ancestor, and boom, COVID happened. So it wasn't actually good timing, but I guess people were very cautious and they followed precautions very quickly and cautiously. So we went from temporarily restricted to quite already very seem to be going to be permanent partying and happy and working in the office and meeting people. So yeah, it's just a temporal period of restricting ourselves from social gatherings, and we back to normal.
You make it sound like everyone just parties all the time.
I mean, why not?
I know. I mean, we should. I'll note. So, because this has been asked on previous broadcasts, but the border is still largely closed. Like people can get in, but yeah, it's mostly returning Vietnamese and business people, experts, investors who are on pre-approved chartered flights, and you have to do 14 days of quarantine when you arrive. So more cases have been adding to the national total, but it's all imported. Like I think it was yesterday or the day before, there were 25 cases that Vietnamese coming back from Romania, but they're all quarantined in hotels or government facilities, so there's no risk of exposure to the community. I mean, that's really obviously the people wearing masks and taking the science seriously has been huge, but also the border restrictions have been massive because it's kept the virus out even as it's raging, ongoing around the world.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird time to be in Vietnam and not wanting to leave.
Being in an alternate, it's almost like being in an alternate universe. When you read about
it's actually quite nice because I changed my goals now. Before it was maybe I can go to at least one new country a year. That was my goal, and I know it's very modest to go, but for many of you who have not realized that Vietnamese passport is actually not that powerful. We need visa wherever we go, like to a lot of places where we go, especially in the US. That's a long line and very costly visa fees there. So yeah, I wanted to do like at least one new country a year, and obviously that's not happening. So I've been applying that goal, but in Vietnam, I've been trying to go to at least one city, town, province that I haven't been before, at least once every month, and I got a whole new perspective about my country. So it's been actually great to do some internal reflection about your own culture.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, of course I like traveling to new countries as well, but Vietnam there's so much to see here. I mean, even though I've been here for a decade, like there's still a bunch of places I haven't been. So I've also been able to go to a couple new places, which has been really nice. Because we can leave, but come back.
Yeah, I'm not taking that bet.
No.
People have been also talking about the vaccine. What was the name of that one that got everybody all round up about the high effectiveness?
Of the
start with
Pfizer.
P. I don't know how to pronounce it. Pfizer. Yeah. Yeah. So like from a Vietnamese perspective, we don't really care about vaccine here. Like the government has not rolled out any campaign to talk about the importance of COVID-19 vaccine. Almost everything you see, billboard, signs, poster-wise, are all precautions against the virus. Wash your hands, wear your mask, stay 2 meters away from another. But nothing has been quite widespread being said about the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean,
Vietnam actually. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I would say, I mean, there are a few under development here in Vietnam. I think one is currently being tested on monkeys, and then another one may enter human trials this month or next month. So they're not ignoring a vaccine, but like there was a Reuters story a couple of days ago saying where the government said like, yeah, we're we're going to try for a vaccine, but the main focus right now is going to continue to be containment, which basically translates to, border restrictions and then quarantine for people who enter, which has worked so far. So why change it?
Yeah, but I guess eventually we do need to open up because people in tourism are still being hit quite hard.
Yeah, I mean,
Globally, I feel even in Asia, countries like Indonesia and the Philippines are actually more anxious to have the vaccine than we are because I think they're the worst hit countries in Southeast Asia. So it's complete. It makes total sense that they're looking forward to the vaccine. Um, and I'm pretty sure that when the vaccine does come on board and when they get the distribution right, I'm sure a lot of Vietnamese people would want a dose of that as well. So, even though they're not talking about it now,
yeah.
But yeah.
So, dinner's 999 us if we're still talking about why Vietnamese like Trump. So we kind of got past that segment. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask. Then Peter asked, why are the Indonesia and the Philippines the worst hit with COVID in Southeast Asia? It's a good question. I think Indonesia's issue has been they never did any kind of lockdown. Or maybe, I think they did a brief one in Jakarta, but not nationwide. I mean, Indonesia is, if you guys don't know the geography, it's massive. There's like 17,000 islands. Population is almost as big as the U.S., so it's a pretty formidable place to get a handle on it. But from following journalists based in Indonesia that I know on Twitter, I think they just haven't done a very good job of kind of getting the messaging out and allowing flights to continue and that sort of stuff. And then the Philippines, I'm not as sure. I'm guessing kind of the same reasons, but I mean, it is interesting how kind of mainland Southeast Asia, or at least, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, have all done exceptionally well numbers-wise, as far as we know, while maritime Southeast Asia has definitely struggled more.
That is a good point. So if you guys are watching this on Hap News, please click on the award button to award the podcast. Let us know what you're thinking. Leave us a comment on Twitter. My handle is at Fighting Sen on Twitter, and Mike is
at Mike Tatarsky.
What is your handle, Mike?
Yeah.
Very simple.
And if you're on, Reddit,
and we can read your comment, your message, and have a chat with you from wherever you are. If you don't have any other questions for us, that'll be it for today. Thank you so much from wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to get back with you soon for more news from Vietnam.
Yeah, thanks everybody.